إلهي إن كان الندم على الذنب توبة.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون، الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا والشفيع ذنوبنا، سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد صل على وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، صاحب العصر والزمان، خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان، ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، أوصيكم ونفسي عباد الله بتقوى الله. In this first khutbah, I encourage and invite myself and all of you to tread the path of taqwa, to be individuals who are God-fearing and God-centric and God-conscious. Taqwa is that path where we find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in everything that we do. In every known act of worship, every worship that's ma'aruf shudeh, and also those everyday acts that we do, where if we continue to convert the niyyah to be for Allah, those everyday acts become acts of worship. As the Holy Prophet says to Abu Dhar, attach a niyyah to everything that you do, such that even your walking and your talking and your going to school and work becomes worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Taqwa is that conscious lifestyle where we are not so much consumed about what others might say, but rather obsessed with what God might say. In this process of taqwa building, there are several elements that the Ahlul Bayt and the Deen has taught us. Piety can be and should be seen in every decision that we make inside of our life. It's not just for the masjid, it's not just for certain ayam or certain days. It's not a fasli taqwa, nor is it a seasonal taqwa. It's a piety that we see that no matter where we see you, at what stage in your life, you are the exact same. And part of that, one thing that the emphasis has been placed in the Ahlul Bayt's teachings and their words has been about this tongue of ours. Haqqun lisan, the right of the tongue, is a very comprehensive discussion inside of the deen. Our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin, alayhi salatu wassalam, in his Rasat al-Huquq, his treatise on rights, talks about the Haqqun lisan, the right of the tongue. And these are reminders for all of us. Sometimes I think that we forget the power of bayan that we have, the power of the tongue that we have, good or bad. You know, the eyes have limited capability. The ears have limited capability. I can only see certain colors. The ears can only hear certain sounds. But the tongue is that gift by Allah that can either mend hearts or break hearts, bring families together or destroy families, unite communities or disunite communities. And we don't understand, a little bit what the power of our tongue can be. Sometimes, we look at these physical scars that we go through. Those scars heal, those scars eventually disappear from our body. We forget that those scars even happened. But the scars that are left behind with our tongue, those verbal scars, sometimes they last a generation, a lifetime sometimes. You know, I do a lot of counseling in Toronto with many of our youth who are riddled with, addiction or living just a life that is away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. While there are many reasons why that happens, one of them is when I begin to probe and really get inside, the reality of what's going on inside of them. They date back to the idea that when I was growing up, Sayyid, I was always told that I would never amount to anything. Either by my parents or by my classmates or by my teachers or by, God forbid, the alim or somebody else. And so that stuck with me. Those verbal attacks stuck with me to the point where now I live my life based on those verbal attacks. This tongue has to be controlled. This tongue has to be maintained. We have to understand the moment something leaves my mouth, I can no longer put it back in my mouth. And now we become a slave to the words that we express. We go around following those words everywhere it goes. And as many fires as those words cause, that's how many times we have to go and put out those fires. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, Allahumma salli, talks about the idea that a wise man first thinks, or his wisdom resides behind his tongue, whereas a fool just speaks and then thinks about it later. And in this day and age, my brothers, please, very carefully, in this day and age, the tongue is no longer this piece of flesh in our mouth. The tongue is today's WhatsApp. The tongue is today's email. The tongue is today's social media. The moment you send an email or you send a WhatsApp message or you forward a video you should not have forwarded, it's gone. It's gone viral very quickly. You cannot bring it back. You can sit there and try to delete it, but snapshots are already been made. Screenshots have already been done. I cannot tell you how many times we have seen individuals in their anger, in their rage, in their emotion, in their grief, they express things that they should not have expressed. How many times have we seen people who have gone through tragedy? God forbid they lose a loved one, a young member of their family, a husband, a wife, something, and out of anger from Allah, words of shirk and words of kufr come out of their mouth. How could Allah? How dare Allah? Who does Allah think He is? I did everything for Him and this is how He repays me. Yes, it's out of emotion, no doubt. But the words, be careful, the words are very, very delicate. On the flip side, the words can bring us towards Allah. Again, Imam Sajjad, alayhi salatu wassalam, Allahumma salli. In his discussion on the etiquette of dua, it's a very beautiful discussion. A lot of our youth ask us, Allah knows what's inside my heart. Right? He knows exactly what I want, what I need, what I desire. What's the point of me expressing my dua? Or sometimes, in the middle of Sha'aban, the Nime Sha'aban Jashan, we give out these ariza papers. And sometimes when growing up in Toronto, typical Indo-Pakistani community, I would see some of my elders grab this ariza and just kind of, fake write something with their fingers. It happens all the time. And one day I asked an elder, what are you doing? What is this? He says, Khub, the Imam knows what I want. This is just a little bit of a formality. And it came across a tradition by our fourth Imam who says that when you want something from Allah, express it with your tongue. When you express it with your tongue, your ear hears that expression and reminds yourself that the person you're asking for every hajat and desire is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And your sense of tawheed now strengthens inside of you. If you simply keep it inside your heart, that's one way. Yes, Allah knows, no doubt. When you express it with your tongue, however, the various faculties that are connected to the soul strengthen. So this tongue is extremely important. I ask you very humbly as a son and a brother of yours, to please be very careful when you express anything out of your tongue. Please know that the person in front of you, you don't know how they will take it. You have no idea. There's one story from the life of our sixth Imam, Imam Jafri Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. It's a very famous story, but one I think that fits in the topic, and then inshallah we'll end our first khutbah. What was very norm back then was that groups would come from far and wide to visit our Imam. So our Imam is in Medina. There's a group from Kufa now who has come and visited the Imam. A whole qafla, a whole caravan. And they come and they visit the Imam and they sit with the Imam and they have a nishis with the Imam and they talk about the state of Kufa. And one individual says to the Imam, now very carefully, says, Yabna Rasulullah, the people in Kufa, some people in Kufa don't think very highly of you and your family. They talk ill of you and your family. And they say this about you and that about you. And he begins to actually, reveal details of the conversation that this man had in Kufa about the sixth Imam and the Ahl Bayt by extension. And the Imam is listening. When this man is done and he says to the Imam that as your Shia, you should know what's being said about you. Okay? Sometimes we do the exact same thing, right? We go to a person and we tell them, look, I'm one of your friends, I'm a family member of yours, you should know that Fulan is saying this about you behind your back. And we think we're doing them a service. Look at the response of our sixth Imam. He says to this man from Kufa that I want you to pretend that the people of Kufa who have said this about me and my family have shot an arrow to me. And the arrow missed. It didn't reach my ears. I have no idea up until now that they said this. What you have done by coming all the way from Kufa to tell me what these people have done, you've picked up the arrow and you've struck me with it. We don't need to fuel the fire by telling others, look, this person said this about you, that person said that about you. The Imam is saying there was no need for you to come and tell me these things. Whatever he said, to you. May Allah forgive him for whatever he said. But for you to pick up that arrow and strike me with it was not necessary. This tongue can be very lethal. This tongue can be very, very beautiful. But nonetheless, understand it is a beast that Imam Ali says that needs to be controlled and tamed, that needs to be expressed properly. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give us that tawfiq, inshallah, to control our tongue in this very difficult times, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to forgive our sins and those of our parents, inshallah. We ask you, Allah, in these ayam of Muharram, to not give us any gham except for the gham of Ali Muhammad, inshallah. We ask you, Allah, today is the day of Friday, there's always one dua on Friday. Allah, make us worthy and isqabil of the zuhur of Imam al-Zamana, inshallah, and make us stand beside him when he comes. A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat. وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صدق الله العلي العظيم. وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين العبد المعيد الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووزير رسول رب العالمين. اللهم صل وصل على صديقة طاهرة فاطمة الزهراء. اللهم صل على وصل على سبطي رحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد أوصيكم ونفسي عباد الله بتقوى الله. In the second khutbah, I again advise myself and all of you to be individuals who live a life of piety. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites us towards a certain lifestyle. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu istajibu lillahi wa lirasuli idha da'akum lima yuhyikum. O you who believe, O believers, say labbaik. Answer the call of Allah and the Prophet when they invite you towards that which will bring you hayat, which will bring you life. Meaning what? The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to pinpoint the idea that my version of life you should say labbaik to. It means that there are other avenues, other entities, other satanic devices that are also calling all of us towards their version of life. Ignore all those versions and we say labbaik to Allah's version of life, which is a life of piety. Piety, taqwa, is that concept of muhasabah, to understand that we will be held accountable for everything that we say and do in this world. And as hadith says, we should account for ourselves before we are accounted for, inshallah. We are in the midst of the first 10 days of Muharram. Tuesday marks the day of Ashura. And as we get closer and closer to that very, very difficult day of the day of Ashura, it's important that we understand the message of Ashura. It is not one day of grief and gham. It's not one day of amal and then one day of faqih shikni and then one day of a maqtal of Imam Hussein only. Yes, no doubt, it's a day of grief. It's a day where nothing else matters but Ali Muhammad. It's a day where we drape ourselves in black. This dunya does not matter. We come and we shed a few tears for our Mawla Hussein, no doubt. But there's a message on the day of Ashura that perhaps is not more prevalent than today. And that message is of resistance. That message is of istiqamat and maqawimat. Imam Hussein, many of my youth ask, Imam Hussein sacrificed everything he had on the plains of Karbala, and yet Yazid still ruled for 2 years after the day of Ashura. A lot of my youth ask, at least in the West they ask me, these protests we have, Al-Quds Day, or the protests for Baqi, or the protests for Sheikh Zakzaki, or the protests for Sheikh Nimar, all these different protests that we have, what's the point? It seems like the more we shout, the stronger the zalim gets. So what's the point of us on the streets of Tanzania or Dar es Salaam, on the streets of Toronto, on the streets of wherever, chanting, chanting, chanting? It doesn't have any effect. They will do what they want to do. And so in the process, what ends up happening is that you believe that I don't have a responsibility in this day and age to say anything. I must choose what? To be part of the silent majority, God forbid. Watching the zulm happen and me remaining quiet. Imam Hussein left a process for us with his shahadat. Left a process for us to emulate. That when you are face to face, ru standing in front of the zalim of your time, you sacrifice everything. You give everything, but you don't give a bay'at to that zalim. You don't give allegiance to that zalim. He can take your family, he can take every drop of your blood, but by you giving allegiance to the zalim, you are basically agreeing to his lifestyle. With this grief, I ask all of you, revive the spirit of the inqilab inside of us. Revive the spirit of resistance inside of us. Speak out against the zulm that's happening in Nigeria, against our Shia brothers. Speak out against the zulm happening with our Muslim brothers and our Hindu brothers in Kashmir. Stand up and speak out against what's happening, continuing to happen for so many decades in Palestine. Iraq is in front of us. Afghanistan is in front of us. Syria is in front of us. Pakistan is in front of us. There is no corner of the globe, it seems, where innocent lives are not being killed and innocent blood is not being shed. And you want us, in the name, we are Husayni, to remain quiet inside of our homes? No. Now everybody has their own method of doing whatever you want to do. If you don't have that feeling to come out on the streets and protest, fine. But use your social media platforms. Use your 1825 WhatsApp groups. And forward these things that are useful, not useless. Spark that inside each other. There's a reason why the enemy from day number one has always made the ziyarah of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein difficult. There's a reason for that. The enemy knows that when the zayir of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein goes and sends his salams to Imam Hussein, he comes back with a renewed sense of inqilab. He comes back with a renewed sense of revolution and resistance. And that scares the enemy. So long as we are in the masjid praying salat, they're very happy. The moment we take our deen outside the masjid, that's when they become a little bit worried. But that's precisely what the deen is. And his advice to his son, our first imam, very openly says that wherever you can, rise up against the oppressor and support the oppressed. He does not say that the oppressed has to be a member of Ali Muhammad or a Shia. No, wherever you see oppression. So if there are our Christian brothers being oppressed, we will stand beside them. Our Jewish brothers being oppressed, we'll stand beside them. Our Hindu brothers, our Muslim brothers, our Sunni brothers who are being oppressed, we will stand beside them as who? As Husayni. Individuals who come every year and gather and remember what? The tragedy of Karbala. Not just as an annual ritual, but as a lifeline, as a roadmap, as a process for us to uphold. There's no point in us sending la'anat on the Yazid of 61st Hijri while today's Yazid is left to do whatever he wants. We say what? Ya laytani kuntu ma'akum fa'afuza ma'akum. If only I was there with you, Abu Abdullah, I also would have attained success. Yes, if we were there with that Hussein of 61st Hijri, maybe. But there's a Hussein we have in Ghaybat as well. And that Hussein is on his way. And if the ashab of Imam Hussein were at the ultimate level, inshallah you and I as the ashab of this Hussein, our Hussein, will also be at that level as well. But it requires us to work now, not when the Imam comes. This notion that we have sometimes that let us, kind of sit in a corner and ajil farajuhum. And when the Imam comes, I'll better myself. By then it's too late. Better yourselves, better ourselves, and the Imam will come. Not the other way around. The Imam requires us to prepare the zameen and the environment for his arrival. And part of that is this commemoration. Tuesday is Ashura. After Ashura, many of us won't be in the masjid. It's a matter of days left. With your gham and your tears, ask Allah to destroy the enemies of humanity, inshallah. With your tears, ask Allah to give us that tawfiq, that inspiration, to rise up against oppression today and not be those in Medina who watched Imam Hussein leave Medina towards Kufa and didn't accompany him. There's no reason why our third Imam only had maybe 100, some say, maybe even a couple of hundred, let's say. The famous number is 72, right? So some books say a couple of hundred. Let's say, for example, a couple of hundred people. In Medina and Mecca, everybody knew who Imam Hussein was. They all witnessed Imam Hussein being sat on the lap of Rasulullah, Husaynun minni wa ana min Hussein. They knew the maqam of Imam Hussein in the eyes of Rasulullah. And yet he's leaving towards Kufa and he has to invite people to come and join him. And still, there were so many people who gave excuses upon excuses. God forbid that happens when our Hussein comes. I ask you please, as I mentioned in the verse at the opening of the Karbala project, it's such a prevalent verse for us today. When the Quran says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. For the ones who say that our Lord is Allah, the ones who say La ilaha illallah, ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. And they rise up, they resist, they don't bend, they don't apologize, they don't break, they don't walk away. تَتَنَزُّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. Angels will descend on them. Allah تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَبْشِرُوا بِالْجَنَّةِ الَّتِي كُنْتُمْ تُوعَدُونَ. With three pieces of news. In this era of grief, in this era of fear, when you are individuals who not only say La ilaha illallah, but you resist on the path, Allah will say, angels will come and tell you, don't fear. Don't grieve. Meaning what? Have that courage. And if you do this, then inshallah the bisharat of Jannat is waiting for you that Allah has promised. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in light of those Ashab Hussein who gave everything they could for Imam Hussein, we ask you, Allah, inspire us to become the Ashab of our Hussein, inshaAllah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to weaken the hands of the enemies of Islam. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give that victory of those young Shabab Jawan who are on the front lines in Yemen and Bahrain, in Syria and Kashmir, all over the world, to grant them victory upon victory, inshaAllah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to hasten the reappearance of Imam al-Zamana and to make us worthy of his zuhur, inshaAllah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.